climbing our mountains this year. On there? Okay, there we go. These mountains have been difficult for some, but we've all been climbing. That was our theme this year, to climb the mountain. I hope that the thoughts of the year have solidified in your hearts and minds that we must be climbers. We must keep moving. We must continue the climb. We've learned a lot this year, I think, about climbing that mountain and learning about what is going to be required. We've learned that we have to stay grounded because it's uneven at times. And while we're climbing, we have to stay grounded people so that we don't slip and fall and become damaged. Because we know it's not easy. In fact, it's oftentimes more difficult to climb than it is easy to climb. My path was not like yours, and yours is not like anybody else's. They are unique to every one of us. In order to make that journey, we have to be people who prepare ourselves. You don't just get up one morning with no preparation and go climb a high mountain. Doesn't make sense. And so we have to be prepared for that prepared place. One of the ways to be prepared is to realize that while we're climbing the mountain, it's a whole lot easier if we don't climb by ourselves. If we have people with us, working with us and holding us up and guiding us, it's a whole lot easier to climb. And while we are not climbing alone, and since we're not climbing alone, it is important that each one of us determines that we're going to climb without grumbling, without complaining, without seeing all the negative things that are out there. Instead, we should climb giving grace to everyone around us who are climbing as well. And that's very important that we climb that way. It's not going to be easy. Sometimes the trip up the mountain becomes dry. And therefore we have to stay hydrated with the living water that will keep us on the path that we want to be. And while we are there, we're climbing because, in fact, the mountain is there. We don't have a choice. If we're wanting to accomplish the final goal, because it is there, we have to climb. Thankfully, we've not been left in the dark. We've not been left without a guide who comes to us and says, I've been there. I've climbed the mountain, and I'm here to help you. In fact, I created the mountain, so I know all the twists and turns. I know all the pitfalls. I know all the problems. If you'll just listen to me, I'll get you there. We close today by noticing that the entire time, whether we acknowledged it or not, the summit has always been in view. All we have to do is open our eyes and see it. All we have to do is focus and see that the end is in sight. It's not hidden. It's not behind a fog. It's clear and it's real. The end is in sight. Stay focused. It's a little difficult, maybe, to see the summit, to see the top, and wanting to be there. I remember when we were traveling across the state of Kansas, I believe it was Kansas, you know, one of those flat states out there. Stephanie was little, and she looked out the front and she saw the magical McDonald's arches. We're going. But it was so flat and it was so far off, she couldn't figure out why we couldn't get there. They had created it on an overpass over the interstate, and so the arches were sitting up really high. And you get off on either side and go into the middle to the McDonald's. And she just kept looking at it. But it doesn't seem like she's making any progress whatsoever. Sometimes that might seem like our journey. Like we're climbing, but we're just not getting there. We're not making it. We see it always in view, but we're just not getting there. And that desire for that place is real. I've used this illustration many times, but it's one of the most powerful ones I've ever encountered with our own Doris Morris. Years ago, she had a critical health condition. And I was in the emergency room with her and Al. And it was bad. Medically, I suppose, she died. And they came rushing in, and Al was waiting, revive her, get her back. And they did. And when she came back to her full senses, she said to Al, "I'm mad at you for bringing me back." Probably because she had realized that she had finally made the summit. Why come back? I say that illustration a lot because I want it to be my motivation. And I hope it will be for you. But the summit is always in sight as we climb. Think with me, if you will, the text that was read about Abraham. Abraham was a man who saw the summit his entire life. He saw the end. There's so many people of faith in the Bible that did some spectacular things, some incredible things, and we look at them and we go, how were they able to do it? I think it's because they saw the summit. They saw the end of the journey, and it helped them hold on. Think with me, if you will, about Abraham. In Genesis chapter 12, God came to him and he said, get out of this country. Get away from your father's house. I want you to leave. You're going on a journey. God called him to a place he had never been before. He had no idea what it looked like. He had no idea what he would find. And furthermore, he was called away from the place he did know well, the place where his family was, the place where he was most at home, the place that was comfortable. And God wanted to uproot him. I'm going to give you something different that you've not experienced before. Here's your call. I don't know sometimes whether I could follow that call. What about you? Put yourself in Abraham's shoes, and one day God just out of the clear says, here's what we're doing. We're moving. How do you just pack up and walk away? And God never showed it to him. He never said, here it is, look what it looks like. I'm just telling you, I'm taking you there. Okay? I know that he saw the summit, which is why he packed up and left. Verse 4 says, and he prepared to leave. The Hebrews passage read says, he looked for a city that had foundations. He was looking for whatever it was that God was calling him to do. He could do it because he had a view of the summit. I do believe that God is in the business still of calling people today, not in an audible way or not in a massaging of the heart way, but I do believe that there is a call. And Abraham, he heard it because he had his eyes on the summit. Number 2, he was willing to accept and understand the covenant from God because he had his eyes at the top. There was a covenant that God said, I'm going to have between you and me. And it's a covenant that's going to involve a land promise. I'm going to give you this land, and I'm going to give it to your generations. It's going to filter down past you into the future. I'm leaving you a land promise in my covenant. God said, I'm leaving you a legacy in my covenant. You're going to have a child. Yet old and past childbearing and child developing years, your wife will in fact have a child. Hard to know, hard to understand. God, we're past those years. If you recall, Sarah laughed at that thought, but not Abraham. Abraham proved that he had his eyes on the summit by the way he tried to help God fulfill His promise. Abraham said, okay, I get it. Anybody born in my house, the firstborn son of a servant, is mine. That's going to be my child. Thank you, Lord. I've got it figured out. God said, wait a minute. This child will be fathered by you. Oh. And he and Sarah both said, we're going to help you, Lord. And so he took Sarah's handmaiden, Hagar, to have a child by her. This is how God is fulfilling His promise. God said, wait a minute. You're going to father the child through Sarah. What? Sure, he got it wrong. But he so much believed that the Lord was telling him the truth that he tried to help him accomplish it. Because the covenant he accepted. And third, I know he had his eyes on the summit because God gave him a challenge and he accepted it. Abraham, take your only son. Go to the mountain that I will show you. And there, offer him as a sacrifice on an altar. All of a sudden, leaving home wasn't difficult. Going to a new place wasn't difficult. Understanding how God's going to give him a child wasn't difficult. But Lord, you're going to take my only son? But dutifully, because he had his eyes on the summit and it was always in view, he took his son and they went to the mountain and built an altar. And he bound up his son and put him on the altar. His son had said, Lord, God, Dad, we have wood, we have fire, we have an altar. We don't have a sacrifice. Here is the proof that he knew the summit. Abraham said, son, the Lord will provide. And before he could strike the death blow, an angel stopped him and showed him the lamb caught in a thicket. Abraham always saw the summit in his mind. He saw the end. He saw what was out there. And therefore he could take the call and accept the covenant and take the challenge. The same is true with you and me. If we keep our eyes always on the summit, if we can recognize that the top of the journey is in view, if we will just open our eyes, then we too will accept the call of God. Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And by it the elders obtained a good report. Hebrews 11 says that faith is the accepting of the call of God. Faith is not that strange thought that says, I have no idea what's out there. I don't have any idea what I'm doing. The way is dark and the chasm is deep. But if God tells me to jump, I will. That's not faith. Bible faith is moving forward to the future because of all the evidence of the past. Because of what I've seen, what I've been through, what I've experienced, I am willing to move forward. That is faith. God has called you and me today to be people of faith who simply move forward because God has proven Himself to be true. He asks us to accept His covenant. He's made a covenant with you and me. And the covenant is, I've taken away all of your sin and your guilt. Just do what I say. That's the covenant. So how do I keep the covenant? We walk by faith, not by sight. 2 Corinthians 5 and 7. If I am a person who keeps the covenant, then I am walking in the covenant like Abraham did. And finally, third, it's going to be a challenge. Not easy. There are going to be all kinds of obstacles and roadblocks and all kinds of people and opportunities that will take us off of the path, distract us from the journey, and get in the way. But just like Abraham accepted his challenge, God expects us to handle the challenge too. So how do I handle the challenge? 1 Timothy 6 and 12, Paul said to Timothy, fight the good fight of faith. When it seems like you just can't go any farther, fight. When it seems like everything is against you, fight. When you don't think you know what you're supposed to do next, fight. The only way you can make it, the only way I can make it, the only way God knows that we can make this climb successfully is if instead of looking around here all of the time, we keep our chin up and our eyes up, and we're looking at the top. That's how you get there. That's how you make it. And it's in view. It's clear. It's in view. The only question is, will I see it? Have you ever thought what it is like to look back from the top? What do you think that's like? When you lose someone close to you, and you know that they are in the hands of God, do you think, when they look back over their lives, was it worth it? Tonight we're going to talk about that. What is the view from the top? But for today, I hope that you're headed to the top. Don't stop. The climb is for those who have accepted Jesus and been immersed into Him to have sins removed, and now you're a part of God's family, and with that family you're climbing that mountain. Hope that you're there. If you're not, or not faithful to it, today would be a great day to get started. Our shepherds will be here to help you if you'll come as we stand and sing.